This is my sister, Evangelion and Me, a media analysis podcast in which I try to convince my non-anime consuming sibling that Neon Genesis Evangelion is one of the greatest pieces of modern art produced in our lifetime. Welcome anybody who discovers this. I'm Josh, and I'm looking in the camera at, say your name so they know who you are.
I'm Steph.
All right. If somebody skipped episode 0 before this, you watched basically your first 2 episodes of anime ever. Episode 1 of Evangelion, Angel Attack, and episode 2, The Beast. Starting with episode 1, how are you feeling?
I mean, I'm excited.
What was it? I don't know. What were some of your initial takeaways? What do you have questions about? What do you like? What do you not like?
Why does Shenji have to do the robot? Did he take Shenji's DNA or something and infuse it in the robot? I don't know. So that I was like, where are all the people? Is Shenji the last kid and only kids can do robots? I don't know.
We have to start a questions to be answered pile.
Yeah.
So this is good.
So you don't need to answer any of that. I assume that's
Yeah, my goal is to sort of give an analysis of what happens in the episode and our reactions to it and my insight without spoiling things down the road. In case somebody ever discovers this and they're like, I want to watch it for the first time along with these people, sort of like a book club kind of
just
thing.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Good
so
point.
I'm not going to jump, and because you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil ahead.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. We'll probably have to break down the action sort of act by act.
Yeah.
I'm more just your initial reactions and questions to the show as a whole. Or
the first episode I was like, okay, cool. There's a giant robot and that kid's gonna run it and his dad's an asshole and I don't really follow.
I assured you. There might be giant robots.
There were giant robots for sure, which is great. And then I don't love deadbeat dads who aren't actual deadbeats. It's he's got a career. Why can't he just have the kid at his house? What's the big deal?
Yeah.
You're just a dad. All you have to do is be in the same room.
This is going to be the crux of a lot of the conflict all the way down the line.
Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, okay. So what you told me about the other week and okay, so this is probably some dad that's broken from World War II, only we're dealing with that era of male.
Well, that's interesting. It's 2015 in the show.
Well, but not actually in the show, but that's the parallel for
this is really
the writers.
Ooh.
Or for
I like where you're going right now.
Yeah, I feel my brain jumped to that also because I read Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs to my son tonight, and Coco, his grandmother, was like, oh, this is totally a World War II narrative. So I was thinking about that. And I was thinking about what you said the other day where, I don't know, the what are they called? The
otaku.
The otaku
culture.
are kind of the otaku culture, and that's kind of 70s, 80s. So their parents are sort of World War II vets or just thereafter. So yeah, anyway, man, I'm just kind of making those connections.
I'm loving that. Because I didn't even put it for myself in that context, having seen the whole thing. This will be my 3rd and 4th time through. I didn't put it in as explicit terms to myself yet that you just did.
Well, I think you kind of led me there with what you told me in the intro last week. So that dad is traumatized, makes giant weapons. For some reason, he doesn't talk to his son because he's a big jerk.
Yeah, you got the gist of that so far. Okay, cool. Anything else before we start breaking it down a little more?
I mean, I can't, I don't watch anime, so the male gaze in a cartoon is super weird.
So we had each other on camera while the episode was playing, and every time a fan service shot happened, Steph would make a little grimace and just shake her head, like like the mom that she is.
It's just, it's just, it's just so wrong.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, this episode the episodes we saw, 95% of those shots are of women who are of age, at least, that are like supposed
Okay.
to be in their late
Oh no,
20s.
there's gonna be ones that aren't of age.
Yeah, this is just the tip of the
But they
iceberg.
are all cartoons, so it's like, why matter? It does make my brain connect to our culture and our not animated gaze of actual women. And I'm like, it's kind of effed up that movies do that in general, but it's like in a cartoon, it's not so bad. It's just
Yeah. Well, the thing about this show is it's the shot choice is so explicitly purposeful when they do
right,
that
right.
that the this is what I was trying to explain before. It makes me read it as like I am seeing this through the eyes of the 14-year-old boy that is our protagonist, and the way his hormonal brain would be viewing this scene.
Yeah, agreed. I got that
Like,
sensibility
it's still
too.
like they're definitely horny animators being dirty men. Like, but there is like a added like something,
Yeah.
especially these first few episodes when it's like a shot of like up Masato's dress and like Shinji in the background looking on like frozen.
Yeah, like it helps articulate his anxiety and where he is.
Yeah, it's like my brain still works that way, you know? And
Yeah.
like I don't have tons of memory of when I was a teen, but I'm sure it was like exponentially worse at the
I
time.
mean, I've seen teens do it before too, and you're just like, "Oh man, poor
Yeah.
thing."
And like his like sexual hormonal like coming of age thing is like I think a core theme of everything. So that's why I'm like just let it go. Just let
Yeah,
it
no,
happen.
I can let it happen. It doesn't feel as misogynistic as it would if it was live action,
Yeah, because that's
and
like a real person.
like it did have a point, like you said.
Yeah, what it just occurred to me is like when it's live action, especially like when it's full nudity, it's like there's like a capital boardroom decision being made of like if this woman shows nipples, we'll make this much more money from teenage boys who tell each other about it, you know? Because they'll go, oh, this star's boobs are in it. Anyway, all right. So enough of that. But well, let's get through these episodes. So I told you before we started, I watched the full opening credits every time. It's like an all-time iconic opening and like extremely well done in that the show handles lore in a way that it's like borders on like Easter eggy at times. Like if you
Mhm.
want to really understand the full lore of the show, you have to like comb through frame by frame. And this is at a time when you didn't have streaming like we
Yeah.
just watched it. So like there's like lots of single frame flashes of things happening that are showing like deep lore for like the big expanded world and universe of the show, which is
Okay.
also speaks to the fact that like when you get to the end and things get interesting, it's not just like totally random. It was there from like day one.
Okay.
So we also see lots of nude lady silhouettes and boobs.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's kinda funny.
Which again, it's like, I don't know, it's sort of the hormonal brain of this 14-year-old boy.
If it weren't for the patriarchy, it would be okay.
Yeah. So we open up we see some of the city, we see this alien monster thing, and it's like swimming through the water, and out the gate establishes one of my favorite things about this show is the sound design.
Hmm.
I think it's maybe the shot of the UN tanks as they're all lined up and
Mhm.
like ready to take this thing in. You see it like splash in the background, but you don't hear it. All you hear is the cicada swell, which is quick side note. I produced a podcast last summer about the 17-year cicada brood 10, which happens through the Midwest of the US. So I thought about this a lot, and I've thought about cicadas a lot. And like
I noticed the cicadas at one point.
they signify like a lot of stuff. They signify like quiet loneliness for me, and it hits this core of like childhood of like late summer, and
Yep.
that like dread of going back to
Aw.
school. But it's like I don't know. It's just like this most beautiful sound to me, and they use it all the time in just unmoving frames. So like I've noticed a lot of this stuff for the first time. How the show uses sound and like scale and lack of motion to show like emptiness and loneliness and like distance between people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
I'm wondering too if the cicadas is a foreshadowing of like these creatures come every 10 years or every 20 years or something. These
It
angels.
does have a meaning beyond just the sound effect.
Yeah.
But I
It's
can't reveal what it is.
but yeah, no, like you
It's
said, I
nothing
feel
huge.
similar about cicadas and their sound. I love it.
Yeah, but
It is kind of melancholy though.
yeah, melancholy is a good way to put it. So then we have this boy who's at a phone and a car comes up, and amidst all the chaos of this thing coming through, for some reason there's this boy. He has somebody he's supposed to call, and she comes and picks it up. We learn this is Shinji Ikari and Misato Kisaragi. And you asked me if he was a boy or a girl at first. I don't know why. Was it his voice?
His stature and his hair. He's just kind of small in his hair.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure like if it was like a woman or a boy.
So then we cut away. We see this place where all these really professional guys are doing a bunch of techno babble, and I think we just are supposed to assume this is the UN, but that's where we first see Shinji's dad. And this thing's just blasting away, taking planes down. Just a bunch of action stuff. The car almost gets stepped on by the angel, and then it gets rolled like 100 times after the angel blows something up, and they're totally fine, which is great. I'll ask what, if anything, you take away from these things everybody just instantly starts calling angels.
Yeah, why do they call a bad thing an angel? I feel like I've seen that somewhere before.
Mm-hmm. I feel like
And is that like a weird translation or is it?
that's a good question. No, that's pretty specific to the show that these things are definitely known as angels.
It's like angels of doom, I guess. Angels of destruction.
Yeah. So there's no establishment of origin for these things at this point. So that's kind of like Act 1 is sort of like setting up. There's this empty post-apocalyptic world, and this kid was called in to show up for some reason to this town while it's being attacked. Their car gets blown up, and then they flip it over, and somehow it's taped up already, which I think is very cute. And this, I think, is the point. I forget what you said about Misato, the woman.
Oh, she's
I think you called her fabulous or something.
she's sort of glamorous.
Yeah.
They get like she has these big earrings and this swooshy hair and
And she comments she messes up the captions, I think, call it like her best outfit or her one good outfit, and she is wearing a cross necklace, but I don't think we've seen. Shortly, we will see an explosion in the shape of a cross.
I don't think I noticed. I noticed she was wearing a necklace and it didn't occur to me it was a cross.
Yeah. Like I always thought of this as like she's dressed as like a slutty priest in this opening. And I don't think there's any particular meaning to it. But then we get like this is one of the things that I sort of noticed for the first time on this rewatch is the rest of this sort of act of the show is establishing the world in all these great little details. When they're driving to the city thing,
Yeah.
and you commented on the car elevator.
Yeah, that thing's cool.
Yeah, there's this sheer amount of scale that is used to and like infrastructure for this whatever the hell this city is that bills the world as there's definitely something going on, that these people have armored the hell out of their city and built this massive fortress, because as this like scene continues, now we're inside what's known as Nerve headquarters. And we get a bunch of different shots of Shinji and Misato being lost in this huge space. And it's like the sound is cavernous, the shots are cavernous, like they're
Yeah,
tiny
I
on the
noticed that.
screen. Like the place feels so desolate. And then we get the shot of them in profile. Is that in this part when they're
I
going
think
up?
so. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, there's a face back there. And
Yeah.
it's just staring right at them. Is yeah, all of this is just building up this sense of like whenever we're in the Nerve headquarters, we feel like this like cold distance between everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then but then there's like the command center where everybody the thing like the thing that blows me away about this show, or I just like is silly, is the calm confidence everybody always has when things are falling apart is really interesting. Like during the attacks, like nobody's ever like, "Oh my god, we're all gonna die." They're always just like firing off more techno babble of like, "Launch this, fire that, do this." Any more thoughts about that part?
Yeah, I noticed the silhouettes and they're going up the stairs, and it looked to me like there was a hand, and it was like
Oh yeah.
picking
There's
up Shinji.
yeah, that's what I love. The hand is already reaching out to Shinji of the robot.
Yeah, the hand's like picking him up.
Well, that's when we meet Ritsuko, who's introduced as the director of Project E, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut away to we see the robot's face for the first time. Shinji's in the dark, and the robot's staring at him when the lights come on. And this scene is like the ultimate setup of Hero's journey. It's so good. He's coming to this unknown world. They're when they're exploring the Nerve headquarters, which is like kind of one of the first parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you go into the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're called they have the call to duty or the call to
Mm-hmm.
action or whatever, and he's refusing it, and he's surrounded on all sides by people that are just like
You're doing it.
harassing him into yeah. So you have the two women on one side, and then his dad is always shown towering over him. He's either towering over him, or you get this like profile shot, and then Shinji's in the background just like looking so defeated and sad as they're telling him to get in the robot, which is like I think I said the line when the last time. This is like like an online meme to like
Just get in the robot.
yeah, just get in the robot.
Just get in the robot. All right.
Big meme from the show.
Gotcha.
And Shinji continues to refuse the call, and then we get more destruction. Then they do the most effed up thing
So unethical.
I could possibly think of to do to not any child, but your own son. And they roll out some beat up girl and say, all right, we're going to make her do it.
Well, fine.
And they make sure he's watching.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was so manipulative.
It's just yeah. So that part I always knew like, yeah, this is manipulative. This is messed up. But it combines with some stuff from the next episode that impacts like I'll say it now. Like I started watching this for the first time like as horror genre, like psychological horror this time, like and people will talk about the show this way. They'll say like, yeah, the first like 5 to 10, 12 episodes, it just feels like normal giant robot anime. And out the gate this time, I'm like, oh no, they are psychologically terrorizing this kid from like the first minute he arrives.
Interesting. Yeah, totally. Or it feels very like when they wheel her out, it's like they don't care. They're like, we don't care.
Yeah, well, and they couch it in language of like, this is the only hope for all of humanity. And we've gotten a little bit of a taste of like a post-apocalyptic something's going on.
Yeah.
Not enough, there's not quite enough urgency to like really sell it that like this is the only hope, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Because they're still just kind of like, all right, we'll just make Ray do it.
It feels more like, yeah, well, the crazy science genius says this robot might work, so I don't know, let's try it. Like,
Yeah. So yeah, the girl, and then she tumbles out of her hospital bed that they've rolled her out on, and he picks her up, is covered in her blood. For God's sake, I think that's when he does his like, "Don't run away, don't run away,
Don't run away, don't run away, don't run away, don't run away. I'll do it. I'll be its pilot.
which is like the saddest
Aw.
thing in the world when he tells
Aw.
himself not to run away, and you like, it's kind of this first glimpse into like he just wants to be wanted or needed or something. And meanwhile, the angel's still destroying the place. And then we have the big, let's drop our mystery to solve, where the angel crashes stuff on them, and the robot protects Shinji. And they're like, no one's in control. What's your
Yeah, that
best
was
guess
cool.
what's going on there?
Well, you said the robot protects Shinji, but I thought maybe Shinji was just like connected in a way to the robot, that he made it move because he put his arm up and the arm, like his arm
Yeah.
was kind of where the robot's arm was.
I noticed that for the first time. Like, they're in the exact same position.
Yeah.
So it is, yeah, like a possibility. And it's, yeah, I'm looking at that frame right now. It's very cool. And then, so he agrees he's gonna do it, and then we get like 2 minutes of launching this thing, which is awesome. This is like, because you, I guess Pacific Rim probably qualifies as your best indoctrination of giant robot genre.
I think so.
I mean, Transformers, you've seen some Transformer
See a
movies,
little bit.
but like comparatively, I think Pacific Rim is way more comparable to, in terms of like being influenced by this.
Mhm.
That like the again, like the scale and the infrastructure of everything, and the amount of time they take to show it to you,
Mhm.
I can't put into words like what it does for me in terms of like how good it makes this show. Like, I'm not sure what it means to me.
Well, I don't know. Like, if it was just like a quick flash of a giant robot, then you'd just be like, yeah, yeah, giant robot. But like getting to see it is like being at a museum, you know? Like getting to examine it is cool.
Yeah, and I think it's also like establishing like the amount of work that goes into like I'll say at this point, maintaining these things,
Yeah.
these robots. But I love like when they well, first they show the entry plug, which is like where the pilot is, and it
Yeah.
goes directly into like the base where the like head
Like
meets.
nerves, nerve
Yeah.
stem,
Yeah, so
brain
it's like,
stem.
yeah, the brainstem. It's the point where basically like everything from the brain down that controls the rest of the body would like, what's the word I'm looking for? Is like the most centralized
I
or
think so.
condensed. And that's where the human pilot goes. Which is also very cool. And then he drowns in Tang.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was weird.
So it's called LCL. And for now, it's just like, this is just how this robot works. It's how they breathe in the robot. Apparently, I don't know how much further I should go about it, but
You could
it's
just
just
leave. Yeah.
something just make a mental note of.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I did not like that.
And he feels like he's drowning in it, and then we get the sweet launch sequence. And there's one thing I also picked up for the first time is during the launch sequence, there's something they call synchronization rate harmonic levels. and then they cut to this screen where all these like batteries filling up,
Mm-hmm.
or, like it looks like batteries, and one half of it is like binary code on each little battery. One half is
Oh,
like
yeah.
binary code, and the other half is genetic code.
Yeah, the proteins things.
And it's like they're like locking together. Well, I don't know. I kind of noticed the genetic letterings, the ATCG, in the past, but
Okay.
like the fact that the way it's paired with binary and it's sort of like syncing up is pretty sick. And I did not notice before. Which
Yeah.
is what? I'm gonna see if I can remember. Adenine, cytosine, guanine, and what's the T one?
Trizosine. I don't know.
It's something nine. They're all something nine. I don't
I
remember
don't
what the T
remember at
one is.
all.
So yeah, they're the four genetic. What are they? Proteins.
Markers, proteins.
Like that all have to like. Somebody who's taken freshman biology, please email me and explain this because that's the last time I've talked about this. But at least the letters stuck with me enough that when this was
Yeah.
happening, I was like, oh, it's syncing his body and brain to the robot. Yeah, so we get the sweet launch sequence, and hold on, I gotta back this up. I should just share my screen when we're doing this because
Okay.
I'm like scrolling through the frames of the show. There's one where they show there's like a line shooting through and it looks like a subway map as the robot is coming up from underground.
Yeah.
And I just noticed this just from looking at it when I have it on pause on my screen, is it actually says like Boulevard A when it like breaks off, and like Boulevard B and
Oh,
C.
yeah, yeah.
They have like tunnels
Oh,
they can
yeah,
shoot
that
them
thing.
through, which
That's
is
awesome.
sick.
That's sick. I assume that's just how everybody got in and out, but that's just for the robots, huh?
It's literally just for this robot.
Just that one robot.
And it's built through the entire city.
That's good.
We'll get in the next episode that I'm pretty sure no one's supposed to know about it somehow. So yeah, he pops up, he sees the angel, Misato wishes him luck, and we get to be continued. So that's the end of episode 1. The big thing was we ended on that to be continued, and I said this while we were watching it. It was like, imagine being 10 years old and it says to be continued right there, and you have to wait a week before you see what happens. That's some tension building, baby.
Yeah.
Rewatching the first 2 episodes, the like tension and release and the pacing are the 2 things that stuck out to me as above and beyond almost any other television I've seen. This might be maybe top 3 best first episodes I've ever seen of a show. I don't know what else I would put above it though. I feel like I remember Breaking Bad being a pretty good first episode. It like starts at the end with him. He's holding a gun and he's in his underwear in the middle of the road, and a car is running him down. And then the rest of the episode is about leading up to how he got to that moment.
Right.
Which I think is also an excellent, great, like first huge tension building episode.
Yeah.
Like most shows out the gate, the idea is the pilot's like, here's kind of the characters.
We don't want to put too much into this because we're waiting to see if it gets picked up.
And this, it's like, oh, these guys have a plan.
That's true.
They know exactly what they're doing. Which leads to my other thing that I've been saying throughout is that all of the like thematic and sort of more emotional feely stuff is kind of there out the gate in this first episode, with all this like scale and distance establishing this like lonely empty world, which like just was not on my mind the first time I watched this show. I was just like, he's just saving the world, it's a normal place, you know. Even down to I talked about like the cicada sound, how that sort of establishes that space and loneliness, but even down to the scene where I was talking about everybody surrounding him and they're all kind of jabbering at him to get in the robot and just like peer pressuring him before they really manipulate him. The space, this like scale and emptiness of the space is established down to the amount of reverb when he like yells.
Yeah.
There's a part where he yells and like the reverb, I'm like, that's exactly what that, like a space that size and emptiness would sound like.
Yeah, yeah.
So, it's just like the attention to detail and like what it's doing emotionally to the viewer is so purposeful, like in every single moment. I think you could watch this and be like, it doesn't physically move enough in terms of the animation. People might be like, "Oh, there's all these still frames. It's just because they're lazy and cheap and like."
Oh no,
It's
yeah,
like,
that's funny. Doesn't feel that
no,
way at all.
I don't think people really say that about this show. I think people who just know nothing about anime, like our mom, would probably say that, you know.
Yeah, she hates cartoons though.
But like, even that, it's like purposeful in the moment.
Yeah.
Because like you're supposed to be focused somewhere else, and there's more of that in like the next episode. So
That's definitely how I felt about Dragon Ball Z.
yeah, Dragon Ball Z, it's definitely stretching and like they're cheap.
That show is so frustrating to me because at the time I'd be like, they're just yelling at each other.
Yeah, it's like that show holds up so much better now that you can just like blast through the 18-minute episodes back to back to back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I didn't think of a show like that came out today where we can be on the internet on 10 different devices while we're watching TV. No one would watch it. It would have to move like 30 times faster than it did. But like we had nothing else in the 90s. It was just like, well, this is my 20 minutes of entertainment I get today, so I don't care if they yell for 10 minutes of it. But in this show, it's like, yeah, there's dialogue and it's like purposeful that we're far away from them and we're not seeing a lot of motion,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
So that was episode 1. Then we blasted right into episode 2 because I just feel like you got to watch these two together, even though
it would have been frustrating to wait another week to watch the next episode.
Yeah, and like,
thanks for that.
Given the amount of sort of time and energy you have to invest in watching things, I feel like we'd come back and you'd be like, "What happened?"
That would happen. Yeah, that's for sure. I'd be like, "Wait,
these two episodes, you really got to link together to keep pace of that." So episode 2 opens and the show calls it The Beast. Netflix calls it Unfamiliar Ceilings, which I thought was interesting and didn't notice until just now. So it opens with the Ava on one side and the Angel in profile staring at each other. Silence. No sound. So again, there's like something purposeful being done with the sound. And then it immediately gets pulled apart. The Ava does. After he tries to clumsily walk.
Man, that sucked.
The contrast of when we're inside and things don't move much versus when we're outside and fighting, the action scenes are like so beautiful in the way these things move. But I guess we should talk about that at the end when they get back to when it really starts moving. The Angel starts attacking it and it's like rips its arm off. I'm curious if you notice anything or have any thoughts about.
Did his head explode?
Just got dismantled.
I think his head explodes in the first one, right?
Yeah. We start to see its head explode.
And yeah, we don't see the full head explosion till the end.
And again, like there's this use of sound when the Avas, or I think it happens later, sometimes like when the Angels, like they'll like get cut and they quote unquote bleed.
Yeah.
There's just this
major cranial damage, extent unknown.
Just like shooting sound.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that was great.
They just gush blood.
That was real. That was real, like campy almost. I can't think of like campy horror. It was like, yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I never thought of it in those terms. It's like because like I feel like camp and like being like very like visceral, like ooh, I feel it, are like on opposite ends of the spectrum, and somehow it smashes both of those things together.
See, I don't feel it. I felt it was just like it just reminded me of Kill Bill's which is like riffing off of Japanese culture.
Yeah, which also I think the scale of like the battles and the explosions and the collateral damage, it's also speaks to that. because they're just again shooting these giant cross-shaped explosions all over the city. I think it's safe to say I'm pretty sure there's not a whole lot of like important symbolism to that, other than like how fucked up would it be if these things explosions are cross-shaped?
Or like, how cool would that be? I don't know the status of Christianity in Japan, and
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at. So like they don't really have a strong relationship to Christianity.
that's what I
So for
figured.
them it's just like here's some fun iconography to use that like is symbolic in other cultures. So at this time video games were starting to get shipped over from Japan, and those were the ones that I grew up
Mhm.
obsessed with, and they would censor the hell out of like any little religious reference. They would just pull it out. Even the word shut up, they would change to shut up. Even something as small as that, they'd be like, this is whoa, those people take God really seriously in America. So you got to get that shit out of here. That's kind of the attitude.
Well, also like there was all the crazy stuff about video games, and
Yeah, but like the language of the games was like they barely ever said so much as like ass or damn. And like I said, they would censor somebody saying shut up to shit app. And like it was just absurd like how much they censored stuff from Japan till like the early to mid 2000s. So anyway, the other thing I want to say about the Ava battle is there's so much like homage to Godzilla stuff, like early Godzilla. Or I guess this would be like kaiju film, which is giant fighting monster movies.
yeah.
It is otherworldly when the giant robots and monsters are fighting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they build on it and play with it as the series goes on, where to make those movies they just had humans on a set where they built a 2-scale city around them, and you get some of the same feeling in these fights, and which I love. And
Yeah.
where the destruction doesn't matter. And when they made those American Godzilla movies in the 2000s, I feel like they tried to make them more realistic. It was sort of like a post 9/11 thing of
Yeah.
like,
I vaguely remember
oh,
this.
like violence has got to be real. We've got to show people the world's dangerous, So they lost a lot of that campiness, and they tried to make like, no, Godzilla's really destroying humans in their homes, But then the reason I loved Kong versus Godzilla is they brought it back. It's like watching a video game when they have like their big fight in a city and like there's
Ooh,
all
I
this
haven't seen
neon
that yet.
lighting. It's not done by humans like in costume, but the shots feel like it, kind of
That's
like this
good.
does.
That's
Yeah.
good. I like that.
Yeah. And so yeah, they tear Shinji's arm off. He feels it physically, and they're like, "No, dude, you're okay." Uh, and then he wakes up in a hospital. There was something you said there.
They mentioned he has to get brain surgery.
Yeah, I don't know what they were talking about on that part.
I feel like it came back up later in the episode. I think
Yeah.
after he gets out of the Ava or whatever we call it, he gets sent to surgery. Like in his like flashback episode at the end of the second episode.
Yeah. We'll get back to that, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of these just long, slow shots of him staring, and again, the sound design is perfect. Is like it's established that like the sound of nature is far away from him. He's like away from it, but it establishes more of this quiet loneliness and confusion and like, where am I?
Mhm.
And then we get an introduction to the deep state.
Yeah, that I was like, wait, who's lying about what? To who?
Yeah. Okay, so let me break down what's happening here. These guys are the ones that are probably going to need the most explanation of what the hell's going on. So Gendo is there, and he's like half getting reprimanded and half being told like, well, but your thing worked. So, okay.
I also got the sense where it's like they can't reprimand him too much because he is like their ace.
Yeah. So these guys are like the ones like, because the first episode we saw him in the room with like generals.
Yeah.
And The show is just kind of like right out the gate. It's like these guys are worthless. You see them in like that scene and really not that much anymore, unless it's like, oh, and all the Avas are incapacitated. This is our last line. Everything else is now Gendo and the Deep State guys, who will get named later. I don't think we got named in this episode. So yeah, they're saying like, oh man, this is really expensive, but it's working. And it's been like 15 years since the last angel attack. And then they talk about they need to do a PR disinformation campaign.
Yeah. I was excited about that. I was like, oh, disinformation, you say?
Well, so this is what I'm trying to figure out about how the world operates. Is like, we see later in the episode, the city can lift out of the ground, right? It can go up and down.
Yeah, that I was like, wait a second.
And
why?
I haven't figured out if that's like an emergency evacuation thing. I think it is. I think there's
it's
enough.
that.
I think you pick this up in the newscast that comes after, which I don't remember being in the Japanese subtitles.
Information regarding the angels is spreading among the public. Something must be done. Nerf will have to work very quickly and comprehensively to conduct disinformation. Nothing less will suffice.
Arrangements have already been carried out regarding that matter. No need for concern.
This morning, the Prime Minister's office in Tokyo 2 released a statement on yesterday's special emergency declaration.
Government denies involvement.
United Nations forces
I see the B-22 scenarios in full effect.
So I might have missed it before. But like, so these guys are like, we need to put out a disinformation campaign. I think so they're saying so no one knows there was actually an angel attack.
Oh.
So they brought the city down when the angel showed up. Everybody's underground. They can't see that like what was happening. And then you hear in the news clip when they show the women bringing up the angel or the Ava, some explanation for like why it was a false alarm.
Okay. Didn't catch that part.
Yeah. So like a lot of like the lore stuff happens like that. It's like on a computer screen for a few frames, or it's just spoken in like the background.
Yeah.
So like that's like, oh, they did this disinformation campaign to make sure nobody knows. And then they mention
The Human Instrumentality Project. That mission should be your top priority.
Gendo Ikari's primary mission, even above defending the city from the angels, is the Human Instrumentality Project. And then it flashes like some briefing on the screen for like half a second.
Cool.
It says, the Human Instrumentality Project.
Cool.
And that's all you get. And now we're like moving on from that. And then the deep state's all like, get your shit together. We're out of here. We're going to talk without you. But they're going to keep giving him more money.
Good.
Those scenes you kind of got to like dive a little deeper. Like, what's going on here? Those guys are always kind of like that.
Yeah.
And that's like a trope of this kind of show, of this era.
Yeah, I kind of know what you mean. I kind of remember it in Godzilla. There was a lot of guys pointing at maps and then pointing the other way.
Yeah, well, I just watched the Hayao Miyazaki movie Castle in the Sky, which came out I think the year I was born, and even that had like this deep state thing going on where the main bad guy, like he's like the generals are in the room and they're like, he's like, ha, 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 you guys think I report to you? No,
it's really fascinating. We might have to come back to this later, but like I don't feel like American culture has that in our TV and movies.
My first thought of that in American TV is like House of Cards.
Even that though is like more about politics than
and even that is more like, no, the elected officials are the dirt bags who are pulling the strings, whereas
but this is like, no, this media is fake.
And like the way things really are, where it's like, no, just a handful of men who have money, they're the ones who are going to decide like who lives and who dies and like how and all that stuff. Which is we're gonna have to keep an eye on that.
We'll have to come back to that,
and I'll have to think about like if that is something we really have much of in like Western media.
I can't think of it. Maybe my favorite example would be Cabin in the Woods.
Oh yeah, a beautiful example. Excellent movie. Especially
since you have the guy from the West Wing who's the guy pulling the strings.
Yeah. who is like the most pro-democracy, pro-government nerd in real life.
Yeah.
Like everybody just makes fun of him on Twitter for being a dope and like actually being like Josh Lyman.
Oh, but I love him.
So then we get a few more minutes of like seeing more of, again, like the massive city infrastructure, recovering the Ava. And then Shinji gets out of the hospital. We get more like sad, distant profile shots of Misato picking him up. And then he sees his dad in an elevator. And it just like really drills it home that this guy is an asshole.
Man, what a deadbeat dad.
So I think at this point, Misato has told him, you saved the day or you saved the city or something. But then the elevator opens up. His dad says nothing. Just stares down at him, closes, and then keeps going. Daddy issues are prominent all around.
So weird.
This dad's
so
having
extreme.
a hard time emoting.
So extreme.
Yeah.
Why does he live by himself and not with his dad? Where is his mom?
Yeah. And then they're talking about like, well, should they live together? And everyone's like, that's just not how that family rolls.
It's like, okay, so mom lives somewhere else too?
We'll find out what's
and
up
like
with mom.
14-year-olds are allowed to live by themselves?
I chalk that up to it's post-apocalyptic world. Maybe there's a lot of orphans and they're like, kids just got to figure it out on their own earlier.
It's like, by like age 8, it's like you can handle yourself.
Yeah. Well, then they assign him to, or Misato agrees to take him.
Oh, I thought it was like a boarding school thing.
Well, and like even she couches it in language of like, he's like my roommate, not like I'm going to be his guardian.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it is like post-apocalyptic. Like, you're grown now.
Yeah, like maturity is assigned at like a much younger age or something.
Yeah.
And then you got squeamish when she joked about not doing funny business with him.
That was awkward.
I think that was supposed to just legitimately be her joking.
I think so too, but it was weird. I was nervous.
Then we're at the supermarket and people are talking about the rumors of the attack.
Yeah.
It's happening in the background. So the disinformation campaign was announced in the background. The people are talking, and we see just Shinji dead-eyed staring ahead, listening to these people. Because you'd think the average 14-year-old boy, especially the hero of a cartoon show, like he'd hear people talking about how he saved the day and he's the secret hero, and he'd be like, hee, that's me. And he's just like dead-eyed, like, I want nothing to do with what these people
I took that as like very like child soldier, like, no, war is hell. I'm traumatized.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's just like, fuck these people. And then they show him the city. We get to see more like cool gadgets moving, infrastructure, the stuff I've been talking about. And then we get to the house. And this is another thing I noticed for the first time is that the tone shifts when we're in the house. I don't know if you caught that.
Kind of, yeah. Especially when we met that penguin.
Miss Misato!
What?
There's a...
Him? He's a hot spring penguin. It's a type of bird.
Pan. Yeah, we meet Pan. We go in the house. So, yeah, you see, they show, again, in profile, Shinji's at the threshold of the door.
His name is Penguin.
The house is light, the hallway's dark.
Mm.
He walks in and he's like, I'm home. And it's very, very cute.
I got really stressed for a minute there, though, when our house is covered with garbage, because that's like my nightmare. Like, walking into a house covered in garbage, and now you got to sleep in a garbage pile. Like,
College house. It's like, yeah.
It's
like when I would be on the road, like as a musician, and somebody's like, we'll let you stay.
It is exactly like that.
And they're like, you could sleep on this garbage can of beer cans. Or
That
whatever.
is exactly what it is. You're like, oh no, I just wanted to go to sleep.
Yeah, but then it's so yeah, Misato is a mess. But when they're showing them eating and she like drinks a beer, I forget if like she belches or something. She's just like
a long day at work, this is what makes it all worthwhile.
Ooh, yeah, that's what makes life worth living.
I was like, oh, that's sad.
Yeah, you saw. I feel like I don't want to put words in your mouth. It felt like you were seen as like, oh, this woman's got a stressful job or a stressful life.
Yeah. She's been a mess. Also, I was like, okay, well, like the whole city shut down, so like the only thing to do is to drink at home by yourself.
Oh, yeah, that's a very good point.
I kind of took it that way too.
Yeah, oh wow. That just like
Yeah.
hit me to like April 2020 is like what these people are living like.
Maybe that's where I got that sense. I was like, oof. Vacant city by herself.
Yeah.
Maybe they're pen pens though. I don't know.
I'm not sure how like how well the show ever establishes how much of the world's population is around. I think they might at some point, but I think you're on the right track. Life just doesn't have a lot going on in this world.
Yeah, like things are evacuated. It felt like an evacuated war city or something, you know?
Yeah, but my note was that Misato lives in absolute goblin mode. Fellas, don't we love it? The otaku male. Hell, every straight cis male is conditioned from the day he's born to fall in love with Masato Kitsuragi.
Because Musato is actually a man.
Yeah, she's just every trope that like men are told about, like, this is the perfect woman.
And the women I've met like that, they are hell to be around.
Which is funny because she's a mess. And
Yeah.
I think the show will explore the more serious side of that as you go on.
Yeah. No, I mean, I am like, I want to party with her, but I've met that type and it's a
But
mess.
I want to leave, before things get too weird.
Yeah.
Before the crying starts. Yeah, so they have fun together. We get the scene where Shinji's naked. And he meets Pen.
That was good jokes.
Yeah, that's just a classic bit where they use the lair and she pulls. I think I was watching your face when she pulls the beer can away and you're like, oh, and then there's another thing there to block his wang from being on screen. Yeah, so like the tone in the house is usually, and it's like this is like a different style of anime. I there's a word for it, but like this like very much like sort of like light home life
Yeah.
storytelling is a genre of anime, and the show goes into that a little bit when they're in the house, and
I
like
like
the
that.
lighting is brighter, the colors are brighter, and there's a penguin there.
Why is there a penguin?
So it's like the only place he gets these sort of like comforting moments. Then we cut away to there's like a broken down section of the Nerve headquarters that Ritsuko and Gendo are looking at another robot that's all busted up. And we're like cutting back and forth, and Shinji has this tape player. And this was like the thing that cut me about like, oh, this show gets depression. Is he is on his bed motionless and his tape thing's going and it reaches the end and he doesn't move a centimeter.
Yeah.
And just lets it rewind and keep going. And I was like, that is depression. Like, they get it and like shock. And then we see like Ritsuko and Misato talk about him. We're cutting back to him. Then we like smash cut back to the robot fight. And I'm just like, yes, dude.
Yeah.
This is brilliant. Well, there's like one little shot before it where he's like, I hate when I'm staring at these unfamiliar ceilings. It brings back the things I don't want to think about. We get these rapid fire things in his brain. And then we're back in the robot fight.
Yeah.
And it's loud and it's moving fast and it's brash and the music is tense and the tension is just like boom 1,000%. And I loved it.
Yeah, that was cool. That was good.
Like that they bookend. We're establishing like, okay, this kid's really traumatized. He's like really depressed, like even more so than he was in the first episode. Like, what happened? And then they're like, boom, we're gonna show you.
Yeah, but he didn't remember that, right? And then he's remembering it. Like like at the beginning, he's in shock, and he didn't remember anything.
Yeah, I'm
Or
pretty
he
sure he's
says
not
something.
remembering it. It goes berserk, and we get our first instance of an Ava scream. Which is one of my favorite sort of like horrifying sounds I've ever heard. Is when these things yell for some reason. And then the way it moves, it's so primate-like.
Yeah.
And primal. The weight that it moves with is not something I've ever seen in any like kaiju movie, any giant robot movie. That's very purposeful in the way these things just heave themselves around.
Yeah.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
Though. Oh, and we do have a bit about breaking through AT fields, which is established as like
right.
some kind of shield thing that these things have that'll come
Gotta
up
have
more.
a shield.
So then the angel self-destructs on him. And the thing I just noticed this time around, we get the sick part where there's a cross explosion and then cut away to the angel coming, or the Ava coming through the fog, and everybody's like, it survived. Classic trope. I love it.
Did we talk about its brains exploding from both ends?
Oh, yeah.
We did for a second, but
you get more of it here. Yeah. Speak on that.
yeah, no, that was great. the out of both the head, the bottom of the head and the top of the head.
Yeah, I never put the words to it like you did earlier, where it's like Kill Bill, silly, violence.
Campy horror, but like there's a better word than camp for it. Like,
I mean, it is pretty campy.
I guess.
Like I said, for me, it smashes together this visceral, guttural verisimilitude and campiness, which are things that are not supposed to go together. I feel like a lot of the battles in this show are like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then like they're rescuing him and he's still like got himself intact. So we see like, okay, the battle didn't mess him up. Then we see him, he's in his entry plug and he sees the Ava outside of it.
Is that what it was?
Its helmet is off.
He saw somebody's eye.
Okay. So that's the thing he was piloting.
Oh, he sees the eye of his. I thought maybe he was seeing the eye of the thing he was piloting. I wasn't sure.
So we get the first but not last vagina of the show.
I was very
symbolic vagina. I don't think they show any like real ones.
Thank God. I don't need to see cartoon vagina. I just don't.
Yeah, and the eye it first forms in the shape of a vagina, and then the eye pops out and like googles around and looks at him, and that's when he goes into shock and horror. They show him scream after he sees the eyeball right next to him.
So, and like it seems like part of the Ava has gotten blown off, and he's like looking at it.
And like the eyeball, it has an eyeball, like an organic eyeball that reforms.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to him in bed, and it's like clear he's sort of like traumatically replaying this now that he's remembering it.
Yeah.
He's got a little bead of sweat on his face. And then Masato comes in, and this is the thing that when I saw it, it totally changed my perspective, or when I rewatched it for this, it totally changed my perspective on this. So before I sort of saw this as like she's trying to like extend an arm to him of being like, you did great, I want to see you do great. And now I read it as it's the psychological horror thing where he's like trapped in this world where people want to use him to expose him to these traumatizing horrors for their own benefit.
Yeah.
And there's some things earlier that's like she doesn't entirely want to do that, but just like the way they frame her in the doorway and he's just like not reacting to it. He doesn't like look up or back at her.
Huh.
It's just like, oh my God, how horrifying would it be to be in that kid's spot right
now? Oh. That's crazy.
And that it occurred to me because I think because I was watching it like in the dark by candlelight. So I was just like way more into this like spooky horror
Candlelight.
mode watching it this time.
Like you got romantic.
So I wrote like she tells him keep it up, and you could read that tone as like, oh no, she really does care about him, maybe, or no, he's sort of like her and these other people's slave now.
Yeah. I felt like she cared about him, but I haven't
Yeah,
seen
like we
enough
don't
to
really
say.
know, I think, about her yet. Like definitely his dad doesn't give a fuck. We
Yeah,
know
no,
that
and
for
that
sure.
blonde lady doesn't care. I feel like Masato's sort of fast and loose with the rules of like, and she's like, I'm gonna take care of this kid because I don't know, he seems cool and it'll be fun, and I like
Mhm.
people, I like hanging out.
Yeah. Well, I think we've seen enough at this point to get a vibe that she's lonely too. I
Yeah,
mean, look, she
but
just
she's
sits
also
in her
chill.
apartment drinking. You know, like she goes to work, she comes home, and she just drinks, and then
Yeah,
goes back to work.
yeah.
So it's like, okay, there's something going on here too.
I love that. I love that she has piles of beer, and yet she has an impossible anime girl body.
Oh, of course. Again, it's like this woman was designed in a laboratory to appeal to the male gaze.
Nobody has ever drank that much beer.
No, this woman would be such a like dumpy slob. Her face would be like all haggard, like she'd have at least 50 more pounds on her.
Man, that was it's
But
ridiculous.
yeah, my last conclusion that like I didn't get to on this is that it uses like the pacing of the each scene or act and the tone of what's happening to like jerk you the viewer around emotionally in the same way that they're doing to Shinji,
I see.
and putting you in this post-traumatic brain of his that's like
Yeah, I got
I'm just
you.
trying to keep the horrors at bay by just sitting in nothingness.
Yeah. Oh man.
That's episode 1 and 2 of Evangelion. What's your vibe? What's your temperature?
I'm in. I'm in. I dig it. I like it. Ready to see more? It's got a lot of resonance for the times we live in and the times we've been through. And what date it came out in the 80s?
It came out in 95.
95. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty timeless, it seems like so far. Some of the things that are happening.
I think that's part of why I set up that sort of idea of the Japanese post World War II loss of nationalism, loss of identity thing.
Mhm.
Because I don't feel like you could tell a story quite like this in America in the mid 90s when we were like, everything rocks. We're all gonna live forever and be rich forever. And like we were making apocalyptic movies, but it was about like the triumph of the human spirit over the aliens or over the
Yeah.
asteroid or whatever.
Yeah.
And this show tonally way more in the first 2 episodes than I realized is like, no, everything sucks. Everyone's lonely. Everyone's scared
Yeah.
all the time.
It's way more like what war and being a refugee is really like. It's way more
Yeah.
in tune with that emotionally than it is the media we watch.
Like, because we've never been on that side of it as Americans.
Unless you work for the military. Yeah.
Well, I just mean like as a nation at large.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
the Civil War is the last time you had to worry about your safety from war
Yeah.
on this soil. And even then, like, they didn't destroy cities. They went out to a field and killed as many of each other as they could, I believe. Still. Yeah. 'Cause they had, like,
Yeah.
big
I
armies.
think like there was the march to the sea, but that was
Or if you were an indigenous person, you were being marched and slaughtered, and
that's
or
true. Or if you
chattel
weren't a white
slave.
guy with land. Anyway, in our lifetime
Yeah.
and in our parents' and our grandparents' lifetime, nobody's experienced a city getting bombed out or a civil
Yeah.
war or yeah. So
And
it just it resonates like with what's always going on, like in other places.
Yeah, so I think it resonates as like the worst imaginable like reality to Americans, which I watched it the first time right when it came out in like May of 2019 is when it came out on Netflix. And then I rewatched it early on in like the 2020 pandemic era,
Mm-hmm.
and that might have been a bad idea. Like it was very comforting in the moment to be I don't know, just like consume something that felt the way I did, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But probably didn't help my mood at all.
I hate it when I do that to myself.
Yeah.
I mean, like it feels good, but then you're like, ooh, that was the wrong.
Wallowed a little bit too much in the catharsis of it. Which is it. This is like I have a very different self-esteem lens that I'm watching it through now, that I'm able to like be a little more analytical of all these other things going on instead of just being like, I feel like Shinji.
I guess like when a hero's journey is done well, or like when a story about being in war is done well, like it's so far removed from myself and my life experiences, I can't empathize or sympathize. What's the right word? The one where you
One of
feel the
those
same.
two.
Yeah. Yeah, because we've never lived in that situation. But I've read a lot of stories, a lot of books, and a lot of narratives of like refugees from wars. And
Yeah, the last thing I'll say before I let you go to bed, because it's late.
yeah, word.
Yeah, just because I watched the Kurt Vonnegut documentary recently, and they
Yeah.
spend a few minutes on that, really emphasizing the idea with his experience in World War II that no, soldiers really are babies. We send babies to war.
Yeah, I was listening to a Holocaust survivor talk, or not survivor, a Holocaust witness. That's what he was saying too. Yeah.
Yeah, and this show drills that home too, that like the ones who are always put the most viscerally close to danger and in harm's way are the children. And everybody else is always under layers and layers and layers of armor and fortresses.
Yeah, they send the 17-year-olds. They don't send the 28-year-old with 2 babies. They send
Yeah, and even the deep state guys, you'll if you paid attention to that, they were hologrammed in. They weren't even there. They're somewhere even safer,
it's crazy.
which is wild.
That's what a Vietnam era dad said to me one day. Not our dad, but a Vietnam dad who was like a little older than our dads. He's like, I just had Leo. I just gave birth to Leo, and he's like, I just watched a Vietnam documentary last night, and like, we can't ever let them do that again. Like, you can't. They will come for your son. Like, they come for your children. And I was like, oh fuck, you're right. Like, that's what war is. They come and take your kid and put him on a front line.
Yeah, this show drills that home
Yeah.
pretty well. Which again, it's like I
only
just
this
like
fucked up dad's like, my son is the right one.
yeah, the fact that it's his dad is like the one that's like, go kid. Yeah, really,
draft,
really
I guess.
emphasizes it.
It's your country drafting you.
Which I'm loving. Like, yeah, I'm like, I don't know, having somebody to bounce this off of and being less depressed this time watching it. I'm like able to pick up even more than I already thought I enjoyed about the show.
Summertime's probably a good time to watch this. Get out and about.
Yeah. Everybody should go outside and touch grass after they watch an episode of this. But so, yeah, if you're listening along, watch episode 3 next week. And we'll do this again because I have fun. And Steph indulges me.
That was fun.